Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishna Kesubos, Parak Tes, Chapter 9, Mishna Tes, Mishna 9. Okay. This Mishnah discusses a situation like this. So there's something that Richie mentioned before. And that is, in all these cases, when she's coming to collect her ksuba, what is she presenting? Now, to say that she is owed the money. So you'd assume, and this is typical, that if she wants to demand her ksuba, then she produces her ksuba. And producing her ksuba means, here, look, she's got the document that talks about her the obligation. If this obligation was paid already, then she wouldn't have the ksuba anymore. Then the husband would have taken back the ksuba. And she would have written him a receipt. A shaver, it's called, a receipt. That would be typical. But there were places, and that's what the Mishnah is talking about, where they didn't write a ksuba. You know why they didn't write a ksuba? Because there was no need to. Because the Chachamim said a man who marries a woman has to pay her a ksuba. So the basics of the ksuba, which are the fact that he has to pay her if he divorces her, if he dies, 200 zuz if he marries her as a virgin, 100 if he marries her otherwise, and the fact that he has to redeem her if she's taken captive, that is something the husband is obligated to do. Finished. He's got to do it. And therefore, there were places that didn't write a ksuba. It was just like, everybody knows he's got to do these things, and they didn't write a ksuba. So if a woman in that kind of situation wanted to collect her ksuba, what did she present? What did she present? She presented, in the case of divorce, her get. She produced the document of divorce, the bill of divorce. She presented the bill of divorce that says she's divorced, and if she's divorced, she deserves a ksuba. So that's how it was. That's the case of the Mishnah. It's a place where they don't write a ksuba, and therefore, when she's going to go ahead and collect her ksuba, let's say in the case of divorce, she's going to present her get. If it's a case the husband died, she has to bring proof that he's dead. So let's read the Mishnah now. Hoitziya get. She produced a get. She took out a get, the bill of divorce, veni ma ksuba, but she does not have with it a ksuba. But she doesn't have with it a ksuba because of the fact that we're talking about a case where they don't write a ksuba. The halacha is goyve ksubasa. She can collect her ksuba, even if the husband says, "I already paid her." Nonetheless, although she has no proof that he still owes her, meaning he doesn't have any kind of she doesn't have any document that says anything about the obligation, the rabbis decreed that she is entitled to her ksuba as though she was holding the document in her hands. At the end of the day, like I said before, in a place where they don't have a ksuba, being that this ksuba is an absolute obligation, the Chachamim said, now you may say that, okay, we know it's an obligation, but maybe he paid already. Maybe he paid. So it would seem that she'd have to produce something to say that there's an obligation here. Because maybe he paid. And again, now if he did pay, she wouldn't have that paper in her hand anymore. But he's saying, so says the Mishnah, that in a case where they don't write a ksuba, she does not have to produce a ksuba to collect her ksuba. Even if he says, I paid you already, and she has nothing more than the get, the bill of divorce that says that now it's time to pay, but that doesn't say whether he paid or not, necessarily. The halacha is that it's considered as if she's got a document saying that he's obligated to pay the ksuba, and therefore she goes ahead and she collects it. Okay? Now she produced her get. Okay, she produced it. Now we're going to see soon that if, let's say, so let me ask you a question. In a case where there is no written ksuba, and there is a get, and the husband pays, what happens to that get? She still keeps it? She doesn't still keep it, because if she still keeps it, she's going to come back another time and say, hey, you didn't pay me, here's my get. One second. So what they're going to do is, they're going to go ahead, and she's not going to have that get, right? If he already paid, if he already paid, she's not going to have that get. The fact that she still has the get in her hand, that in itself already says that, that he still owes her. because so even though she doesn't have any kind of direct document of obligation of the ksuba, but she still has her get. Now, the Mishnah continues, ksuba ve'nimo get. Let's say the case is that although it's a place where they do not write the ksuba, they don't write the ksuba, they don't write it, but she produced it anyway. Okay, she produced it anyway. This guy wrote her a ksuba. So he wrote her a ksuba, but she doesn't have her get. He oimeres avad giti. She says, I lost my get. I lost my bill of divorce. V'hu oimer, and he says, avad shoivari. I lost my receipt. Meaning any time that he goes and he says, I paid, right? Where's your receipt? Oh, I lost it. I lost it, he says. Okay. Now in this, and any time anytime there's any kind of question that he claims there's a payment, and we kind of don't know, that means there's no receipt here. All right. So, but the thing is, in our case, she doesn't have a get either. She doesn't have the get. Now let's just read a little further. Now we can revert to a different case. A lender produces a shtar chayv. He produces the IOU. He produces the document that says that so-and-so borrowed money from him. The problem is it's the Shemitah year, or it's after the Shemitah year. And we know that Shemitah, right, it releases a person from having to pay their debts. So what do you do to make sure that Shemitah doesn't do that? You write what's called a prismal. You write a document that enables you to still be, that makes it that the debt is not canceled. Okay, but here's the thing. He produces the IOU, but he doesn't produce a prismal. He claims that it was a prismal, but he lost it. So what happens in both these cases? In both these cases, the woman does not have her get. She may have a ksuba, which is, something that, was kind of in this case extra, but so she produced a ksuba, but she did not produce the get. And he says, I paid. Where's the IOU? I lost it. Or in the case where the guy, a lender comes and he tries to collect with the IOU, but he doesn't produce the prismal to say that Shemitah didn't cancel it. In both those cases, they will not be paid. In both those cases, the woman will not be paid and the lender will not be paid. Now, in the woman's case, the point is like this, as was mentioned before, as Richie said before. In this kind of case, in any case where, again, they don't write a ksuba, so what allows you to collect your ksuba? Your get, your bill of divorce. Now, in a regular case, she produces the bill of divorce, he pays the ksuba. What do they do with that get? They take it and they basically cut it. They cut it. Now, by cutting it, that means to say that you can't use this to pay. You cannot collect a ksuba anymore with this. Is it proof that she got divorced if she wants to remarry? Yeah, it's still proof of that. But typically what's going to happen is what should be happening in this case is they're going to cut the get. So now, she comes and she says, she shows her ksuba, which again was something extra because this is a place where they don't write a ksuba. And they say to her, where's your get? And she says, I lost it. So we say to her, lose it, you lost your get? A get is a very important thing for you to have. Most women would hold on to that with their dear lives so they should be able to move on. So therefore, we're suspect that what really happened? Like the guy said, he paid, they tore up the get, so she can't walk in now with the get because it's obvious that it was paid then. So we have to be concerned. So even though he doesn't have his IOU anymore, at the end of the day, she wants to be able to take money from him. And in this kind of case, where she should have her get, and to say that she's divorced, and therefore allow her to collect her ksuba, as we said in the first part of the Mishnah, and she doesn't have it, then we say, then we don't believe her. Then we follow his claim, even though he doesn't have his IOU, we follow his claim and we say, you can't take the money away. And the same thing in the case where the lender is trying to say, he still owes you money because I wrote a prismal. Where is it? I lost it. That you're in trouble now. It's not to go in and just claim that you lost it is not going to be enough for us to allow you, even though you have the IOU, and he didn't take away, even though you have the IOU, but you don't have a principal. If you don't have a principal, we don't have enough basis to say that Shmi didn't cancel the debt. You should be able to continue collecting it. Okay, so therefore, in both those cases, we say the halacha is that she will not be able to collect her ksuba. He will not be able to collect his debt. Now, when we talk about here that she does not need a ksuba to collect her ksuba, all she needs is a get. And again, in a place where they don't write a ksuba, the only thing that's guaranteed to her is, we'll call the basics. What's guaranteed to her is the 100 or 200 zuz, and the fact that she has to be redeemed. Anything beyond that could be included in the ksuba, without an actual document, without actual documentation to it, you're not going to be able to collect those things. And in a place where they do write a ksuba, right? That's the way you do it. You go ahead and you write a ksuba. The halacha is then that she's expected to have that ksuba if she wants to collect it. And if she doesn't produce it, then she's not going to be able to get it. So our old Mishnah is where they don't write a ksuba. But in a place where they do write a ksuba, she's expected to produce her ksuba, to be able to collect it. And if she doesn't have it, that already makes us think very strongly that it was already paid. Okay, and that basically, she really doesn't have her ksuba anymore because it was paid up. Now, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, Min hasakana va'elach, from the time of danger and onwards, Isha goivek subas shaloi beget. A woman can collect her ksuba without a get. Ubal chayv goivek shaloi beprizbol, and a lender can collect without the prizbol. What this means is like this. We just said that in both these cases, if she doesn't have her get and he doesn't have his prizbol, they can't collect. But there was a time where the Roman government was decreeing against performing mitzvahs. And therefore, what they did was, if let's say they wrote a get, you know what they did with it right away? They burned it. They didn't want to have any kind of evidence around that they did a mitzvah, that they did something from the Torah. And the same thing, if they wrote a prizbol after the Shemitah year to protect the debts, they burned it up right away. They didn't have any kind of evidence lying around that they were fulfilling the laws of the Torah. Therefore, at that point of time, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, the halacha is, from that time and actually onwards, the woman does not have to produce her get, and the lender does not have to produce his prizbol. Because why, in these cases, why aren't they producing it? There's a very good reason why they're not producing it. Because people didn't let these things lie around, because it was dangerous. So therefore, from that point on, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, even in a case where they don't write a ksuba, she needs to get to go ahead and prove to be able to claim her ksuba, or you need a prizbol to be able to make sure the debts aren't canceled. The fact that you don't produce them is not going to be held against you because of the fact that this is what people have to do. It was dangerous to leave them around. And therefore, they made sure to go ahead and to burn them up. And therefore, if we know that she was married and we know that he had lent money, we will actually still believe their claim that they're owed the money. And I think it's based on the fact that at the end of the day, the husband doesn't have a shoiva, doesn't have a receipt to prove it. And again, in the case of the loan, we know there was a loan. Now the question is a prizbol. Well, people wrote prizbols. It's a standard thing to do. Where is it? Can't keep it around. It's dangerous. And as they say here in the notes, even from onwards, where there was no more problem of these decrees, the halacha stayed the same. You don't got to produce the get. You don't got to produce the prizbol, because who knows things can change. Things can change. The government can change and again decree against the laws of the Torah. And therefore, even after there were no more decrees, you didn't have to produce these documents. Okay, I'm going to keep going because tomorrow we don't have Mishnayos, so it's going to be a bit of a break. So let's just finish up this Mishnah. All right, actually, it's already kind of late. All right, we will have to continue this Mishnah after Yom Kippur, the Sunday after Yom Kippur. Have a wonderful day. Again, there is no Mishnah class tomorrow. And wishing you all Gemar Chasim Tova. Your fast should go well. And we should hear, good news for us and for all of Klal Yisrael.
Amen. I thought a prizbul was a modern thing.
No.